In the First World War, a conflict before television, the public didn't know the hideous reality of the battlefields, but the artist did. In 1916, the English painter Stanley Spencer volunteered as a medical orderly on the Salonika front. The sights and sounds, the appalling carnage of the battlefield, and the everyday humour of the troops deeply marked his feelings about life and death and inspired much of his post-war work. But as an artist, how do you represent such an experience?
His great series of mural paintings here at Sandham Memorial Chapel commemorates the forgotten dead of that terrible conflict. It was dedicated to the memory of Lieutenant Henry Willoughby Sandham by his sister Mary Behrens and her husband John Louis. It's impossible not to feel an incredibly powerful emotion when you walk in here for the first time. If there's a human face of war, Spencer shows it to us here. Soldiers eating sandwiches on their hospital ward, cleaning out their lockers, sorting through their laundry. Intimate glimpses of daily life in the midst of horror. The smallness of the space and the scale of the paintings could make it feel claustrophobic, but his use of colour and light and his remarkable religious symbolism somehow render it full of hope and transcendence.
This autumn, 16 of these paintings will leave the chapel, which is now owned by the National Trust, and travel to London to form a display called Heaven in a Hell of War at Somerset House. It is one of many events planned to mark the centenary of the outbreak of war in 1914.
Stanley Spencer was singular amongst his contemporaries in that he chose to represent non-combative scenes, whereas a lot of other artists at the time, such as Nevinson and Nash, were painting quite horrific, rugged, gloomy outlooks of war, whereas this, during the time, was very idiosyncratic, very personal. A lot of the daily routines haven't changed at all. In particular, laying out kit, that's exactly the same routine as it is today. Soldiers have returned from Afghanistan and Iraq and seen the pictures here and have been profoundly moved by them. Stanley Spencer was a prolific writer. He wrote many letters, and about the chapel in particular, and in his letters he wrote that it was a happy place, it was about happy memories. And for him, I think this was very much a mechanism for coping with what he'd seen during the war. He was a medical orderly, and so the sheer concentration of death and injury was huge. And so the resurrection isn't about people dying and eternal life through God, it's a vision of hope.
By the 1960s, attitudes to war were very different. In 1963, the director Joan Littlewood staged Oh What a Lovely War for the first time here in the Theatre Royal in London's Stratford East. A fierce musical satire about the First World War, its angry cynicism captured a generation enraged by Vietnam. For these young people, the British troops in the Great War were indeed lions led by donkeys. In 1969, Oh What a Lovely War was turned into a film by Richard Attenborough. With its powerful lyrics and stellar cast, it ignited the popular imagination.
Oh, 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 it's a lovely war.
Witty, fast-moving and expertly made, the film remains, almost 50 years later, a significant cinematic milestone, a beacon of an era marked by passionate anti-war sentiments.
And when we've got rum and apple jam, warm pause, right turn, how shall we spend the money we earn? Oh, 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 it's a lovely war.
Next spring, Oh What a Lovely War will be restaged at the Theatre Royal. Its bitter tone is a far cry from some of the more respectful commemorations we can expect in this centenary year. Yet even at the time, certain writers openly described the hell they went through on the battlefields. No one was more piercing than the poet Wilfred Owen, who skewered the old lie, dulce et decorum est pro patria mori, which roughly translates as, "It is sweet and right to die for your country."
Bent double, like old beggars under sacks, Knockmead, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge.
This brilliantly evocative reading by Richard Burton, in a classic recording made in the 1960s, gives full emotional charge to the horror of the events described and the sheer power of Owen's language.
But limped on, bloodshot, all went lame, all blind.
War is often regarded as the ultimate failure of imagination, yet artists have responded with enormous creativity. From the biting satire of Oh What a Lovely War, to the savage grief of the soldier poets, and the redemptive vision of Stanley Spencer. At its best, art remains war's most powerful witness.